As I was walking home a while ago, I was reflecting on Kemi Badenoch's current trajectory and of Liz Truss's ill-fated premiership, both drawing on the dangers of loyally focused cabinet colleagues appointed for their friendship rather than their competence. Cronyism, in political parlance, refers to appointing friends and loyalists in positions of power irrespective of their qualifications, and it undermines policy efficiency, stifles debate, and can lead to disastrous government, as we saw with Liz Truss, and to a certain extent with Johnson, both of whom wanted to gather round their cronies, in contrast, for example, to Margaret Thatcher or Harold Wilson, who deliberately found people that didn't agree with them. Truss's loyalty-based cabinet construction and Badenoch's current shadow cabinet selections absolutely follow this problem of buddyism, cronyism. And if you take Liz Truss, her selection of key figures like Kwasi Kwarteng, Therese Kofi, Kwasi Kwarteng, who was this lead individual, and then exiling her prominent critics like Rishi Sunak, probably the most prominent. Sunak's warnings during the leadership race about Truss's unfunded tax cuts and economic approach proved prophetic, didn't it? His supporters within the party were quick to highlight the chaos as validation of his more cautious approach. Michael Gove, though not formally in the government, Gove wielded influence among Conservative MPs outside the cabinet, just waiting for Liz Truss to mess up. Jeremy Hunt, initially an outsider, he was brought in to stabilise the situation as Chancellor after Kwarteng's sacking. Penny Mordaunt, another significant figure in the leadership contest, Mordaunt maintained enough distance to emerge as an alternative leader, and her understated critiques and her positioning as a more consensus-driven voice offered MPs an appealing contrast to Truss, and it's not surprising she ended up as leader of the House. The other big beast, Dominic Raab, when he wasn't sunbathing on Crete, Sajid Javid, watched from the sidelines, critical of and criticising Truss's direction and their potential return to influence, loomed over her government, highlighting the fractures within her party. Therese Kofi, the Deputy Prime Minister and Health Secretary, loyal, a friend. Kofi's effectiveness in managing the health brief and rallying broader cabinet unity was limited. I know I'm being really kind here. Her staunch loyalty to Truss appeared more as blind adherence, like some sort of pet dragged along on a lead, reinforcing a sense of insularity. Rees-Mogg, a high-profile advocate for deregulation, a staunch supporter of Truss's economic vision, and now consigned forever to obscurity and GB News. Suella Braverman, another loyalist who shared Truss's hardline views, and her brief tenure ended abruptly with a resignation tied to a security breach. But she was too big a political animal to be completely sidelined, and I think she was fundamental in destroying whatever opportunities Rishi Sunak might have had. But at the centre of this web was Kwasi Kwarteng, her close ideological ally, the architect of the ill-fated mini-budget. His aggressive tax cuts and growth strategy without corresponding funding sent the markets into a tailspin, leading to a loss of investor confidence, a sharp rise in borrowing costs, and his dismissal damaged her credibility, making her appear weak and exposing her as decisive, talking about the enemies outside the cabinet, talking about my this, my that. There is no my. She's the Prime Minister. She is the person who is there at the invitation of the monarch. And her adoration of Kwasi Kwarteng's prodigious package, of Therese Kofi's obedient obedient enslavement to her blind loyalty. The outcome of all this was a crisis of confidence both within Parliament and among the public. And here we got Badenoch, much like Truss, who's appointed a significant proportion of loyalists while sidelining experienced figures who backed rival candidates, and sidelining those rival candidates, Tugendhat. Examples like Mel Stride as Shadow Chancellor, Priti Patel as Foreign Secretary, Shadow Foreign Secretary, decisions that appear more focused on rewarding cronyism, loyalty, than strategic competence. The exclusion of figures like Jenrick from a central role, he's relegated to justice. It suggests a repetition of past mistakes. A cabinet chosen for loyalty often discourages dissent, leading to unexamined policies. When faced with major issues such as planning reforms or international negotiations, a lack of debate cripples effective responses. Well, of course, you can say, there's only the shadow cabinet. They don't have to do anything real. But they do. They have to challenge. They have to hold the real cabinet to account. The figures left out or marginalised, such as James Cleverly or Tom Tugendhat, could form the nucleus of future internal opposition. Their refusal to engage in Badenoch's shadow cabinet signals a latent threat to party unity, much as Rishi Sunak and other sideline figures did under Truss. With untested loyalists at the helm, Badenoch's team will falter under significant pressure. The historical precedent is clear. Truss's failure to preemptively integrate varied voices into her leadership was a direct line to her downfall. And the parallels with Badenoch's shadow cabinet and Truss, the weakened policy direction, this eventually leads to a leadership challenge. It is inevitable that within a year, maybe 2 years, if she can hang on long enough, Truss's reliance on loyalists resulted in such a short-lived premiership, marred by rapid policy reversals and an inability to navigate criticism. If you can't navigate criticism around the table, you're certainly not going to navigate it across the ballot, across the dispatch boxes. If Badenoch continues on this path, she will find herself facing a rebellion and a leadership challenge long before the next election. The successful governance or the successful opposition requires a balance of loyalty and expertise, and while loyalty ensures support, it cannot replace the diversity of thought and policy acumen necessary for sound decision making. Will Badenoch learn from the failures of Truss? No. She's too insecure, she's too arrogant, and she's too keen on the mantra that she is tough. She has picked up this fantasy image of Thatcher, which is far removed from the reality. This is a fantasy developed by the media and peddled mostly by people who didn't like Thatcher. I mean, who did really, but that's not important. If you want to learn about Thatcher, you read the books. And I don't think Badenoch has done the work. And cronyism brings short-term stability, yes, of course, among loyalists, but it risks long-term party disarray, ineffective order, and, as history has repeatedly shown, it ends in tears.